have a bunch of animals or do whatever, but live like a normal
Like
home.
Jeff.
No. Actually be at home and live a normal life.
Yes.
Normal. Normal is the key word there.
Yes.
But nothing against
No
Jeff.
10 dogs.
No slight.
Yeah.
But anyway, that went down. And then there was a point where she'd stopped riding with the girls and she rode by herself again for a while. And she was just like real sad, and she liked being at home and hanging out. And I remember with the weekend right before this. Well, actually, no, I'll take it back. It was during this. There was a point where she said, "Well, I'm not really riding with anybody." She said, "Adam's not riding with anybody, so he's gonna join me." I was like, "Okay, cool, that's cool."
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
how
like
could you possibly suspect?
Yeah, it's just like with having your brother there.
Mm-hmm.
So they rode a couple weeks, and I remember there was a point like the first time I really, anything went on, I guess, was towards early in December. But
Of 2004, just.
Of 2004, yes.
Yeah.
But the Thanksgiving weekend, right there around Thanksgiving, I remember Amy, we went out, we were wanting a hot tub, and she actually went out and paid $12,000 cash for a hot tub. She said, "Well, let's go ahead and get this." She said, "We're going to be here for the rest of our lives, so let's go ahead and get this." I mean, so that's definitely a sign.
Yeah.
That's what's in her
She
mind.
could have easily not said that, and it wouldn't have been suspicious. So why, she offered that up. That was a clear sign of commitment.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, there was, and she would say it herself, like,
Yep.
the spot she ended up getting into, she has no idea,
Yeah.
How it happened.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess what happened was Adam came to her, and he'd just been married 2 or 3 months earlier, and he just had all these problems, and a lot of them stem from himself, and maybe he shouldn't have been married, but then he starts really, confining all his problems in her, and the ironic thing about this is like, she started spinning off about how great our relationship was. Well, Matt would never do that to me, or I'd never do that to him, and this is great, da, 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 da. But then there was a point in there where I think Adam, when confining with her, like, did something different that she didn't even think she likes or didn't know she likes, and was very, like, treat her very girly or very ladylike. I think that's what the thing was, which is not like anything I didn't do, and we never had any problems, but it was like a different approach and something we didn't really have in our relationship necessarily. I think is what it was.
Because you guys started off as pals to a degree, and it grew into something a lot more quickly. Yeah.
And what his intentions were, I could say I don't know, but it's just hard to suspect that there weren't intentions.
Yeah.
Especially with this.
Yeah.
And the whole deal was, it's just like being away, that road, that separation. It's very easy to become disconnected with somebody. And even though we'd come home and everything would be good, but it was almost like, I really feel, just like the more I've looked into the situation, it's just like she was kind of intrigued, or just had a weird curiosity about something that she didn't know that she even liked or had been interested in.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think once it started, then he continued the pressure.
And he kind of saw it happening and maybe fed it.
But what was odd is just like she had to be living 2 lives, because we'd come home and everything would be absolutely great, and there was never any kind of change.
Wow.
But I guess there was this kind of, and it's really like people think of like it's just a physical deal, and really it wasn't a physical deal. It was a mental deal more than anything else. But in some ways, a mental deal is worse than a physical deal.
Yeah.
As you know what I'm saying. But then there comes a time where I was going to her surgery in Birmingham where she got hurt, and I really felt like the small amount of physical interaction they had, which is not as great as people think, but it was right before that.
Yeah.
And it was like that weekend that she tears her ACL and everything that I did in my knee, and I really feel like, you talked about religion earlier, like I'm not a religious zealot, you know what I mean, but I believe in God, and I believe in things happen for a reason, and I definitely believe in a higher power, and I just think there was a point where she was supposed to be sent home to like try and get her head screwed on straight.
Keep things from getting even worse than it was.
Than what happened.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was driving down to her surgery that day, and just to give you an example of what kind of boyfriend I was, and once again, ironically enough, I'll back this up, that whole girly aspect or whatever, or spoiling a girl, I think is how Adam likes to describe it, was something that whenever she'd get hurt with surgery or Christmas, like we'd had real good, like I'd had flowers when she came home from being hurt from Puerto Rico. I had flowers and I had wine and I had a gift and a card for her, and just things that I hadn't done because I was raised with such a hard dad, but things that while I was at home started thinking about more of a family life. And it's funny because like even if that's something that she was interested in that she didn't know, like I was already becoming that at this point. And especially at the Valentine's Day, which was getting right towards the end before I found this out, which is really sad looking back in retrospect.
The timing of it,
And we were driving down that night, or I was. She flew and actually drove her to the airport, which was an hour out of the way. I was going to make an 8-hour drive to Birmingham because it was the only way I could work out my schedule. I couldn't fly and get back in time to go to appearances my next day after that. So I actually drove an hour out of the way to Raleigh to drop her off at the airport, make sure she got there safe. And then I started that 8-hour drive, and once I got about 2 or 3 hours into the drive, she'd actually called and said she'd forgot her MRIs. And like they couldn't do her surgery without an MRI, so I had to turn around and drive 2 hours back home, and then make the whole 8-hour drive again. So I literally drove for, I drove for like 13 hours that day.
Yeah.
And while I was during the course of this drive, I got a phone call, and it was I'd called a lot of people on the road, just kind of burning up time. And I called Adam actually, because I actually, oddly enough, it was a little suspicious. Like I hadn't talked to him in a while. And I got a call from his home, and I just remember picking up the phone, like, "Hey boy, what's going on?" "Matt, this is Lisa." And it's just his wife had found, a text message.
Yeah.
I text messages from him, and one from Amy to him, just saying, "I'm gonna really miss seeing you on the road. Love being with you."
Yeah.
Just really, really odd. And it just gave you that real weird feeling. And then I just remember calling her and asking her directly about it, and she absolutely confessed up to it. Said, "Yeah, I did leave that text message. I probably shouldn't have," or whatever. She said,
She was quick on her feet, basically, in retrospect.
Yeah.
She knew how to disarm you, at least somewhat.
I guess, yeah. I mean, she was just like, well, you'll see as time goes on, but she was really searching for a way to get herself out of this.
Yeah.
Because she didn't know what to do. She said, "Yeah, I did do that." She said, "We'll talk about it later," or whatever. If you want to. She said, "Yeah, but it's no big deal, whatever." And then I remember talking to Adam about this. "Hey, man, call me when you get a chance." And I said, "Man, what's up with this text message that Amy sent you?" I said, "Did she send you one?" He said, "Yeah, she just sent a text message just saying that, yeah, she's having surgery tomorrow and what time it is, and she's going to have it in Birmingham." But, that's been my main heat with him, that just his dishonesty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that was the first time you ever brought it up to him, and you got a completely false answer from him.
Yeah.
He held back the real deal.
Yeah. And then, anyway, I drove down there, went to the surgery, and was there. Well, actually, I picked her up in Atlanta at her mother's, and then we were going to drive over to Birmingham together. And I remember just getting in the car, and it was very awkward, very tense, because I was wanting to speak to her about this, and I was kind of wanting her to bring it up first, talk about it. Then eventually, halfway through, I said, "Hey, what's up with that text message? That makes me feel very awkward." I said, "Why is Lisa calling me about that?" She said, "Oh, I thought she was going to ask about this." She said, "I did send that." She said, "It was just kind of like as a friend thing. I was just I was buzzed because I'd been taking those painkillers and drinking, and and she said, but really," she said, "I probably did while I was on the road with him, because I was traveling with him those last couple of months, and I was spending actually more or as much time with him as I was you, and I probably made a connection with him that I shouldn't have made." She said, "But I shouldn't have done that." She said, "But I think that'll be over now that I've had my that I'm having the surgery and I'm going to be at home." And it was like an answer you didn't want to hear, but at the same time, it kind of made you feel better, because
it felt honest.
Felt honest,
Yeah.
and it really was honest to a degree, not all the way, but to a degree. And then, we got there, went to the deal, and she set up the next morning. She had her surgery, and I remember just giving her a kiss and holding her hand, and she was going in, just very emotional, and she was just so upset. And part of it was she was so upset because she knew there was a weird feeling within me that I felt awkward, and she knew that she needed me there the whole while to do this.
Yeah.
She had her surgery, it was fine. I sat with her that day, and everything seemed to be cool. I remember getting back on the road and driving home. But it was real sad. Later, once everything came back out, I looked at phone bills that day, and her and Adam had talked for 3 or 4 hours while I was driving that day, going through all that shit, which was brutal.
Yeah.
And very shortly after I left, back on the phone with him again, which was very heartbreaking looking back in retrospect, which is the stuff that drives you temporarily insane.
Yeah.
And anyway, she'd had the surgery. She ends up coming back home. Things were okay for a week or so, and then Valentine's Day came around, and it's I bought her all this shit for Valentine's Day, and she had a very limited amount of stuff for me, and that definitely threw a flag. And I just saw on her one phone, she had a phone that was in my package, and there was a call from Adam there. And I was like, "Why is this motherfucker calling you? Valentine's Day." I said, "This is odd." I said, I don't want you speaking to him anymore. I said, "This is very, very weird." I said, "I don't know what's going on here." I said, "I don't know what this weird deal is." She said, "Oh, okay, you're right, I shouldn't," or whatever, da-da-da-da. And then we had a couple days where it was just very tense, and I knew something was wrong. And she admitted, she said, "Well, I just think there's a part of me, I'm just not sure what I'm feeling right now, and I think maybe I should go stay with my mom for a few days and try and clear my head or work things out." And then we actually got into a real big argument. She actually drove off for the day, and it was a Friday of that week. She drove off for the day just to go and think. And I remember I got on the phone and I'd called some people, and I remember calling Adam, and I said, "Hey man, what's up with you and my girlfriend? What's going on? Something's very odd here."
Yeah.
I said, "If she calls you, don't answer, and as a man and as a friend, do not call her." And he said, I won't, buddy. I'm sorry, buddy." And he buddied me a lot. "Buddy, I won't."
That can be scary when you hear that word.
And it's just all it took is some honesty anywhere in this, and things could have been figured out or resolved.
Yeah.
So I just figured, dude, it's as a friend, I would still believe what he's saying at that point.
Yeah.
And what happened was Amy came home that night, and she did realize, she told me, she said, I've really been fucked up, and my head's not where it needs to be, she says, and I'm going to fix it, she said, and I'm sorry, I apologize. You know, and I remember that night we had one of the most passionate love-making sessions we've ever had.
Yeah.
Because she'd been gone all day, and I actually went out with some of my friends, and I drank, and I said, we'll come home, we'll talk about things, and we talked about things, and it was very, very passionate. It was.
And was she honest with you that as much as she could be that evening, or not very much?
No, I mean, just the thing she was saying. The thing she was saying was just that her head was messed up and not where it needed to be, but she was going to fix it.
So okay, so it felt honest to you, but it wasn't.
And so, something she told Adam is that she didn't need to be talking to him anymore.
Yeah.
Because she's fucked up. You know what I mean? Because really, like at this point, she's just like got feelings for two people.
Yeah.
You know. So then we spend this weekend together, and like we have a really good weekend, and then there's a point where she had an appearance on Sunday, but then came back home Monday, and everything was very, very good, and it seemed like we were getting back on the right track. And then I happened to go pick up her other phone, which happened to be sitting there, and I checked the messages, where I've never done shit like that before. And I checked them, and Adam had just burned up her phone with messages, just saying, I just want you to know, I love you, and if you're going to be with Matt and not with me, I don't think I can live with myself, and just please call me.
These are text messages or voice?
Voice messages.
And you listened to them?
Yes.
Yep.
And like we'd had a great night, a very intimate night again together. I just like got up to get water, like in the middle of the night in the kitchen. I just saw her on the phone there, and just so odd. I just remember just seeing the phone. It was like in a movie. I just looked at the phone, and it's just like you zoom into it, just going like. Actually, she hadn't been using that phone because that was her own phone. I'd like bought a phone and put it on my package, and that's what she used.
Yeah.
And this other phone, and I checked in these messages, and I just remember hearing them, just like, holy fuck, and I'm just like freaking out. And I just remember. Because the first thing I do, and we had Sprint phones, and I forwarded them to my phone, just because I don't want people to think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I forwarded them to my phone. I forwarded them to Shane, too, who's one of my better friends. It's like, fucking listen to this. I don't know what's going on, but something is, and I'm getting ready to get to the bottom of it. And then I go in there, and I ask Amy about this stuff. And, you know, she just breaks down crying and confesses to quite a bit of it, not quite all.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm irate, and I'm going, people don't say I love you when, you know, this isn't going on where. People don't say I love you without having sex, you know, but that was denied, and even still to this point, like, I really don't think that's happened. It could have, but you know, other stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just remember I was irate. I was throwing lamps and shit, and I just don't do that, dude. I don't get mad. And then I was like, get the fuck out of my house. And looking back in retrospect, I wish I would have handled it differently.
Really?
But I didn't.
Because I mean, some people would say. There's nothing you could do that wouldn't be justified at that point.
Yeah, there isn't, really. But just looking back in retrospect, I mean, there's a lot of things in this whole thing, because I've never been involved in anything like this. But, you know, then she leaves, and she's just upset and wanting to talk to me about things and, like, trying to explain. But, I mean, there's nothing to explain that can really justify at this point. And then she leaves to go to her mother's. And just looking back is just like, the thing that I hate is that she made a huge mistake by being weak in the first place and letting this happen without communicating with me. And then just like, she was guilty, and she was like trying to get herself out of this without telling me, and trying to just like kind of let this happen, then move back on and get here. But she was just still pressured so much, you know, all the time. And it's just, and then too, once again, she wasn't strong enough to avoid this pressure. Yeah. And then, anyway, she'd been asked to leave, and just like, she was really afraid to talk to me because she just didn't want to say the wrong things for a certain amount of time. And then she'd left to go to her mother's, and then there would be times where a couple days later I'd try to calm down and said, look, you know, there's only a small window of salvageability for this stuff. You know, if we're going to salvage something, we need to figure it out. And why did this happen? And, you know, she just didn't know. She said, if I knew it would be easy, but I don't. And I just almost look back like the thing with Susie, as I was saying earlier, where I saw that something could happen, but I was able to put on the brakes where she didn't. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yep. That's why I told that in the story. Yeah. It's a very similar situation. Yes. And then just for it to be one of my close friends, I mean, that's just like, you know, that's just like having two knives put in your back. Yep. You know what I mean?
And as far as your friends in World Wrestling Entertainment over the years, Edge is what, top 2, top 3 of every top 4. I mean, he was one of your closest friends. I mean, this isn't an acquaintance who you hung out with a little bit. This is somebody who you've said if you guys were not in wrestling but lived a block away from each other, you'd hang out a lot. I mean, these are the guys who you were identified with career-wise, but also on the road. One of your best friends.
Yeah, there were, you know, there's only a handful of guys, and he would be one of those guys. It would be one of my closer friends. Yeah. And it's just, I mean, it's just something you would never suspect, especially because you think he's like, you know, just a good quality human being.
And you knew what he was like on the road. He had been married twice, and you knew, I mean...
Yeah, I did know that he had some relationship problems, but really the stuff that we never talked about before. Yeah. You know, and as far as him being on the road, like, I really never saw that side of him, but I've heard things, even, you know, since then, and other things where, you know, there could be problems there.